Hello and welcome to another edition of the Forza Napoli podcast. I am your host, Joe Fischetti. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It's been a rough couple of weeks for Napoli. We lost to Luciano Spalletti's Juventus. We got knocked out of the Champions League after a 3-2 defeat against Chelsea. Mind you, it was actually a pretty good performance against Chelsea. Frankly, it was the Copenhagen match that cost us the Champions League. We got a couple of wins against Fiorentina and Genoa, and even, believe it or not, a refereeing decision that went in our favor in the Genoa match. And the media made a huge deal about it. We got knocked out of the Coppa Italia by Como, and then we dropped points in back-to-back matches against Roma, which again was actually a pretty good performance. Fell behind twice and came back. We had the Alisson goal, some controversy there, and then our most recent match was a 2-1 defeat to Atalanta, and there was a ton of controversy in that match, and that's what we're going to spend most of this episode talking about, but we'll also talk about the officiating in general this season, and then we'll close with a little bit of a discussion of a certain ex-Napoli player that's causing a little bit of I guess, anger amongst Napoli supporters. And I am joined by a guest to help me out with this episode. You should know him by now if you've been watching this show or listening to this show, or if you've been watching the excellent Napoli Nation TV. He is one of the co-hosts of that show. Daniel Bowen, welcome back.
What's up, my man? Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. I wish it was under better circumstances, obviously. It's been a really difficult season overall, aside from the officiating decisions, which, of course, we're going to talk about. I mean, we've had so many injuries this season. We've talked about it before. We can debate who's to blame. There's a lot of different factors, I think. But you add to that we've also not been on the lucky end, call it, of the officials' decisions. Maybe by coincidence, maybe not. We might get into that as well. And this match against Atalanta kind of was our season in a nutshell. I would say there were, two big decisions in this match that did not go our way. I want to start with the penalty decision because, just going in chronological order, it's probably the lesser of the controversial decisions, but um, this happened in the first half. Hojlund receives the ball in the area. He does a kind of step over, puts the ball onto his left foot, goes down. Daniele Kifi, who was the official, awards a penalty kick. There's a VAR review, and the VAR's overturns the penalty decision. What do you think? Was that the correct call?
So if the call is to make in the sense of did the player invite the contact and go down before the real contact happened, then my opinion, yes. Hojlund was going down before his leg got hit the way it did, so he was absolutely expecting the contact to come, and he started to go down before it happened. So I think that often that type of penalty is considered soft and it isn't called, but there's times where there are soft penalties with the inconsistencies. One that worked out for us versus Genoa with Vegata. Vegata didn't go down before he got contacted, though. He got contacted and he's like, okay, let me make sure that I go down so that I can, you know, I can have an opportunity to get a call. Because let's just say Vegata didn't go down at all.
Mm-hmm.
He probably wouldn't have gotten the penalty, right? And then for Hojlund, if Hojlund didn't go down at all, which I think he could have stayed up, he wouldn't have gotten a whistle either, I don't think. But with all the inconsistencies of the refs, whether it's, for us or against us, I think it's anybody's guess sometimes when a foul is going to be called in the box and when it's going to actually be a penalty and when it could be overturned and when they're going to look at VAR or when they're not going to look at it. I mean, none of us really understand anymore what the officiating and the VAR room is deciding on when to review plays and when actual penalties are called. It's crazy to me. It really is.
Yeah, I sent that message to one of the group chats I'm in that at this point, like, you just have to I personally don't think this is, the officials are out to get Napoli because I think every big club except for maybe one feels like they've had so many horrible decisions go against them, this season. I just feel like I don't even know what is considered a foul anymore because there's been so much inconsistency. You mentioned the ones, the decisions against us. I've got a couple of examples here, obviously, and many of them involving Hoyland, who's seems to get like the rules are different for him. I don't know why. It's like why because he's stronger than most players that players can be more physical on him. I really don't get that. But we had this one in the Juventus match where this was it's hard to see in this image, but it was kind of like a double foul with Bremer pulling down Hojlund in the area. And I can't remember if it was Locatelli, maybe, which Juventus player pulled down Vergara at the same time, and a penalty was not given there. We had this was from the Como match in the Coppa Italia where Ramon um, should have been given a second yellow in that match for a foul on Hoyland and was not given. He would have been obviously sent off for a second yellow, might have changed the outcome of that match. Instead, he stays on the pitch, and Como eventually win that in a penalty shootout. This was Evan Ndika pulling Hoyland down on what appeared to be a clear break. If I'm not mistaken, they didn't even give a yellow card for this, or maybe not even a foul on this one.
I don't think it was even a foul, man.
And so like
That's
you
happened more than once with Hoyland, with him like being hugged
just
like they're playing
grappled.
rugby or some shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's where I really struggle when we see something. Okay, obviously, like, this is different. We'll get to the goal that was disallowed, but it's hard for me to reconcile all these things because again, this vast inconsistency in the officiating decisions. Personally, like, if I were to look at this situation just in isolation, I think most people would say it was probably correct to overturn the penalty decision. And again, if for anyone who's listened to this podcast or watched it long enough, you know how I assess these things. I just consider, how would we react if this happened against us versus in our favor. And it did look like Hoyland kind of jumped into Hien, who had his foot planted, versus Hien kind of going out of his way to foul him. The only thing that I would say that makes me also scratch my head, now, mind you, it's not really an official thing, is that we had a penalty called against us um, last season, I believe, for a foul by Anguissa on, I think it was Denzel Dumfries, that was pretty soft. And Luca Marelli, who is an expert official commentator for or pundit for the Zone, his explanation was that once a penalty is given, if VAR reviews it, even if there's the slightest contact, then they cannot overturn the decision. Now, I assume he's speaking not on behalf of the officials, but from an official's perspective. And this was the famous interview with Conte where he said, "Ma che significa?" And so that came to mind because this was one of those situations where a penalty was awarded on the field, there was a VAR review, and there is clear contact. And we can debate, was there enough contact? But Marelli's explanation was even if there is the slightest contact, you cannot overturn that decision. So personally, I think it was the right decision, but I can see, some people were making the argument that it shouldn't have been overturned if we wanted to be consistent with decisions. Mind you, that was a decision from last season. Um, the big controversy, though, was of course the goal that was disallowed. It was At the start, right after the start of the second half, we went into the breakup 1-0, which was really positive. We had, I think, a pretty good first half, I would say, playing in Bergamo. We come out, I think, less than 5 minutes into the second half, and we go up 2-0. And then after Gutierrez puts the ball in the back of the goal, Keefe blows the whistle for a foul. And for those that are watching on YouTube, you can see the play here, and he disallows the goal. Was this the correct decision?
Absolutely not. Um, so Hojlund outmuscled him, and he put his arm on Hojlund to try to fend Hojlund off. Hojlund gets by him, and the argument is that Hojlund locked his arm and pulled him to the ground. Hojlund would have to be one strong dude to pull somebody to the ground when he's fighting with him to get to the ball. So in this case, if the arm was locked, even if Hojlund locked his arm strongly, I still don't think that there's any way that the player himself is not just going to ground hoping that he's going to get the benefit of the doubt and the foul's going to be called against Hojlund. You know, the
Mhm.
other argument is, well, why can't we say that Hojlund was fouled because he put his arm on him to fend him off? Like, when can you and when can you not fend off somebody with your arm? I know that touching inside the box, like putting your hands on each other happens all the time, but in this type of situation, at best, it's a 50-50.
Mhm.
Hojlund beats him to the ball, and Hojlund gets the cross in, so let the play go. And I think the ref let the play go, and the ball went into the freaking net, and then the ref blows the whistle. I understand what you were saying offline in that, the ref needs to let the play continue. But in this case, it doesn't make anybody feel that way when they watch everything that happened, because as soon as it gets scored, he blows the whistle, right? And you've got some out there that will talk about the sideline ref, and maybe the sideline ref was able to see it better than him, and he said something in his mic. I think it was all too quick for that really to happen. But for me, it's a 50-50 play, and the ref should have never considered calling a foul anyway. That's how I
Yeah,
feel about it.
I agree with you. Isaac Hien is one of the strongest players in the league, so I agree. I can't imagine Hoyland could pull him down with, like, his armpit. And I thought it was just a physical 50-50. And for me, like, yes, we did talk about this, that the delay is odd. Maybe he got a message through the mic from the linesman, and that's what caused the delay, because it only took a couple seconds from the time Hien went down to the ball being in the back of the goal. But what I find more controversial is that, to that point, Keefe was actually kind of letting them play. He wasn't really calling that many kind of soft fouls. And so, how all of a sudden that's the type of inconsistency that will drive people crazy, especially the players, because they adapt the way they're playing to how the official is calling the match. If he's allowing them to be a bit more physical, then they're going to play a bit more physically. If he's calling every little touch as a foul, then they're going to be a little bit more careful with the
Mhm.
contact. So that I found really odd, because you know some people pointed this out online as well, but in the build-up to the Pasalic goal, there was an incident where Zalewski kinda tracked back and won the ball off of Mazzocchi, and again, I think kinda soft, but he appeared to sort of shove Mazzocchi down, and then Atalanta counterattack, and they eventually score, from the corner kick. And going back to the inconsistency, if the contact by Hojlund on Hien is considered a foul and a goal is disallowed, then why was this not considered a foul and the Atalanta goal disallowed? I don't know. Maybe I haven't checked the rules to see if like once the ball goes out of play, you can't go back beyond that point. I'm not sure, but it does feel like this match was officiated a little bit one sided here. Um, the other thing is that like we've seen a lot worse not be given. I showed those, all the Juve match, the Roma match. So that's really frustrating for me, and I think this actually has like a direct impact potentially on our top 4 hopes. Hopefully not, but if we look at like if Napoli scores that goal and goes up 2-0, who knows? It's possible that maybe the match ends 3-2. Um, but I think it's more likely that we actually win that match because a 2-goal deficit's harder to overcome. We know how Conte likes to defend. I mean, usually when Napoli score, this was our first match all season where we did not win after scoring the first goal.
Mm.
So imagine if we had a 2-goal lead. At the very least, we would have drawn this match, if not won it. So if we look at the table heading into this round, we were 4 points back of Milan. I mean, Inter's too far ahead. Nobody's catching them at this point. We were 3 points clear of Roma, 4 points clear of Juventus. Was that 8 points clear of Como and Atalanta? Had we won this match, we would have been. I think that the key thing here is that, well, like being 1 point behind Milan, I guess that's a good thing. Like closer to them, closer to second place, which is safer in that top 4 battle. Um, a bit further away from Roma and Juventus. But to me, the main thing is if we won, we would have effectively knocked Atalanta out of the Champions League race, or they wouldn't have been able to catch us on 42 points. I suppose they could still catch uh, Roma. Maybe not even then. 8 point deficit would have been pretty tough, especially given their schedule, which we'll get to later. Instead, we're looking at this table where now we're 4 points behind Milan. We're level with Roma on 50 points. We're only 4 points clear of Juve and only 5 points clear of Como and Atalanta. So now only 5 points separates third through seventh in the table. And top 4 is very much up in the air.
For sure. I mean, the difference between being 5 up on Atalanta and 8 up on Atalanta, like, so we were
Or
8
11. It
and
would
now
have been
we're
11 because it's a 6 point swing, right? So
oh,
if
that's
I go
right.
back to
Oh my
this one,
god.
we would have been on 53. They would have been on
11. That
42.
is that
It's,
is
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Like, and things like you said it, man. This has a very possible negative impact for us in the Champions League, right? It's not like what happened with Atalanta getting that win is like the teams that are between Napoli and Atalanta, it doesn't mean anywhere near to them what happened here as it does to Napoli, man. You know,
Mhm.
like it's super frustrating because we have VAR for a reason. Man, and VAR's supposed to review all goal scoring opportunities. So, like we already talked about, that first reversal of the penalty kick call was probably the right decision. If you want to make the best call in that situation, I think that Hojlund invited the contact and Hojlund went down when he could have absolutely played through that contact, right?
Mhm.
But then how do you not like he calls a foul on this second one and it reverses a goal and then VAR is not going to be used at all.
Well, and he
You
almost didn't
know?
even give VAR the opportunity to look at it because he restarted play immediately after that foul. So again, like to your point, if all goals need to be reviewed, how did they restart so quickly? Again, well, I guess we can debate whether this is a intentional or not, but the league agreed with it because Keefe, I feel like he could have gotten an even harsher punishment. I think he got like one match ban
What?
or whatever. So,
What a what a joke!
but that's
One
effectively
match
the
ban.
yeah.
If you are giving him a one match ban because he made an error that was you said it was a 6 point swing, right?
Mhm,
A 6 point
potentially.
swing in Champions League qualification, and he made an obvious error because you are telling him that he's got to sit for one game. Really, just one game, man? Send him to Serie B and let him finish out the season there.
Mhm,
Don't let him officiate. And this is the other thing too with refs, man. It's happened for quite a long time. Is we get these refs that will be officiating in these super important matches that have a history of screwing up.
mm,
So watch this same ref get another big match towards the end of the season in a very important match that has Champions League qualification implications, or if Milan can pull off a miracle and be close to the Scudetto or something, right?
mhm,
Watch him officiate in another big match. He should be officiating all the mid-level freaking matches. No more relegation, no more matches with, implications on the relegation, and no more matches on implications on getting into Europe. But watch what happens.
I
He's
mean,
going to
part of
end
the
up
problem though is again, and it's not entirely on the refs. I think most people blame Rocky at this point for creating the situation
mm,
to begin with. But now
yeah,
it's like so many refs are in that situation that someone's got to ref these matches, right? Like,
yeah.
Dovetti seems to be the only one that's been good this year, or hasn't had like one of these major controversies surrounding him. So I think they're probably even just not enough officials that are even not qualified, but good enough that you're gonna have to give these guys something to officiate, which is unfortunate. Um, this was the first time that a club official, so not Conte, spoke to the media after the match. Giovanni Manna spoke both to the zone after the match, as well as did the post-match press conference. Conte did not speak. He was, I can imagine, probably quite livid after this, and that might have been a wise decision to keep himself out of trouble. But Manna was had some pretty strong words. I won't read this quote, but for those who are listening and not watching the YouTube version, he basically said like he called it embarrassing. He called out that we would have been 2-0 up in Bergamo. He talked about how this has already been a complicated season for us with the injuries, and we're fighting for Champions League. And he just simply said, "This isn't right. This isn't football." And he kind of repeated that in the post. That was to the zone on sort of on the touchline, and he kind of repeated that in the post-match press conference. And I have to say, like, I agree with every single thing Manna said. I don't think too many Napoli fans are going to be disagreeing with him there.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing, and I just popped in my head, I'm not sure if you're going to bring it up with the officiating in general.
Hmm.
They're going
Yeah,
to
let's
need to
let's
look
talk
at
about it.
they're going to need to look at so you can review the VAR can call the ref to look at the screen for possible red cards,
Hmm.
right? They need to make it to where the ref can look at the screen for possible second yellows, giving the player a red. If they don't make
Hmm.
that decision, I know it's one other moment where they need to be able to go and look at the screen, but if we're going to use VAR, let's use VAR the way it's meant to be used. And that is when there are officiating errors that are obvious impacts to the match. And if you are getting a second yellow to get a red, then that needs to be reviewed because that is an obvious difference in the match, right? For whoever loses a man. So I'm hoping that they at least make that decision on VAR in general. And, I think one of the other things that people have talked about, and I really don't know, I'd like to get your opinion on it,
Mhm.
is using something similar to what we have in, a lot of American sports where it's not really about the VAR booth or the official deciding whether the official needs to look at it, but we have like a challenge that, maybe one challenge per half that each team can have. And those are the only times that VAR can actually be looked at, and the ref is forced to go look at the screen and make his final decision without anybody else telling him anything except, hey, the team wants to challenge this play because it's a possible goal scoring opportunity or it's a possible red card. What do you think about that? Do you think that's even possible that they would consider doing something like that?
So let me first comment on the whether VAR should be able to review second yellows. To me, I think that's more a question of when will that happen as opposed to if that will happen. It sounds like, especially after the incident with Bastoni and Kalulu in the Derby d'Italia. Um, I think it sounds to me like the question is typically rule changes happen in the summer between seasons, but because this is a World Cup, they may even look to change the rule before the World Cup so that it can be used during the World Cup. But I think that is a no brainer to me. Um, because of how consequential a second yellow card could be. Like we have the ability to review red cards. A second yellow is a red card, so that's a no brainer to me.
Mm,
On on the coach's challenge, I'm actually while typically I'm like a traditionalist and I don't really like change. I'm actually quite open to this because we're going down a path right now where we're introducing VAR more and more and more, and decisions are getting more and more finicky, and softer fouls are being called. And the more you use VAR, the more you disrupt the rhythm and the flow of the match, which is not great for a viewer to watch. So I actually quite like the idea of a coach's challenge, with the caveat that if you win your VAR review, you keep that challenge and can use it again, which is kind of like how the NFL does it. Um, because to me, it would limit the number of VAR reviews, and I think it would tend to be used for things that are more obvious. And if it's one of these that are not obvious and the club doesn't get the call, then they lose that review anyway. So, I like it in the sense that it'll maintain the rhythm and the flow of the match, but still give clubs the opportunity to, or the officials the opportunity to correct a major mistake. Like I think it would be enough to rule out these very major ones, right? And then it probably just wouldn't happen for the ones that are kind of 50-50. But if they're 50-50, then who cares if there's a review or not? Like you can debate both sides of them
mm.
anyways. So I actually quite like the idea of a coach's challenge. What do
And
you
the
think?
the difference, well, yeah, I do too. And the difference between, you know, having a challenge review that the coach calls in, in calcio or football or soccer or whatever, is that the clock doesn't stop. In the
Mm,
NFL, you got to get that challenge flag on the field before the next play goes, right? So the clock
mhm.
could be running or not, but it's not about the clock. It's about make sure you get that challenge flag on the field before that play goes. So the one thing I'm wondering about that is would they put like some time limit on how long a coach has before he can say throw the challenge flag? And then the other thing is like the technology, like what kind of access does somebody say like in the Napoli booth upstairs or wherever somebody's looking at the game, what kind of access do they have to replay? Because in the NFL, they got 100% like immediate access to it, right? It's up on the screen. Everybody can see it. The
Yeah.
whole stadium's like, throw the flag, throw the flag. But in calcio, that stuff's not on the screen. The crowd can't really influence whether the flag, you know what I mean? So I think I'm wondering about that part of it too. It's always been frustrating to me that, stadiums in Italy don't have that stuff up on the screen for us to see. Like,
I think
why
that's
not?
intentional because they don't want to get
Come on.
caught. It's like
But
the opposite of
but
transparency.
yeah, I mean, show some integrity and put the replays up on the screen so the whole crowd can see it, right?
Mhm.
It's frustrating to me. Like all the games I've went to, and I was like, God, I wish I could see the replay. And you got everybody, getting on their
Trying to get,
phones and texting with people. Hey, was that a
yeah,
foul? Was that a foul?
which doesn't
It's
work
like,
well either because the internet is so horrible at these stadiums.
oh yeah, the only thing they're going to be able to do is text. They're not going to be able to try to stream to get to it.
Yeah,
So it would be nice to see those up on the screen. And I do think that if they were to make that type of change, that I think doing that along with it, so that say like a coach is, able to look up at the screen and doesn't have to try to get word from somebody else. It would be nice for them to be able to see it and to make their decision that way, but I don't think that would ever happen. So, huh.
yeah. The other thing that's also being debated, which I think I'm less in favor of, but there's valid arguments for it as well, is whether football should go to like a clock that stops, so shorten the length of the match. I think the average game like playing time where the ball's actually in play is around an hour. It seems to be going down year over year. Some I don't know, it's down to like 56 or 57 minutes. But that's something that's being contemplated. Again, it probably just eliminates some of the time wasting that happens during the match, so it makes for a more entertaining product. Kids have shorter
Mm.
attention spans these days. I don't know how many kids are actually sitting there watching a full 90-minute match plus stoppage time in both halves. So that's another thing they're looking at. So in that case, you then it might help with that challenge situation because you're going to have instances maybe you have to wait until the clock stops before you can throw your challenge flag or something.
Mm.
Um, so we'll see. But, we mentioned the Bastoni Kalulu incident. Now I'm gonna stir the pot a little bit because I've been having a bit of a go at Beppe Marotta on social media. Not much. I posted a couple tweets or whatever, but I do find it kind of curious that one club hasn't been really experiencing too many controversial decisions against them. I'm sure their fan base can probably dig some up or whatever, maybe dig back to other seasons. But it is I find curious that ever since Marotta spoke to the media after Napoli Inter, that seems to be when the officiating went totally chaotic for everybody. And now we're sitting here with Inter pretty much Scudetto locked up. And so my question to you, as we're seeing these incidents happen. This for those watching, we have the Kalulu incident on the left, and we have Barella looking like he got his leg chopped off against Bodo Glimt in the Champions League. But my question to you is Inter the new Juve?
Or is it now Interrube?
Yeah, I suppose they don't need to be
Well,
mutually exclusive. We could just hate them equally.
yeah. Well, you know how people say Rubentus for
Hmm.
Juve,
Hmm.
which I don't think we can really say anymore, honestly, currently,
Hmm.
historically, yeah. But it's not going their way, and it's going Inter's way. So that's why I'm saying if you just say Interrube, the Rube is the part of it there that they're owning now.
Hmm.
I mean, I remember Posho Lavezzi used to dive like 3 or 4 times a game. That's my boy. And that was before VAR. So he was a master at diving
Hmm.
and got some penalty kicks and some yellow cards for that. So um it's hard to like look at players in general and try to criticize them for for like what Barella did, right? It's hard to criticize them, but what Bastoni did in celebrating the way he did, I thought was a bad look from a player's perspective, right?
Hmm.
But the entire situation, the worst thing about everything to me is that Inter as a club did not say anything about it being an absolute bad call.
Hmm.
Bastoni admitted that he said I felt contact, and he said he was sorry for the way he celebrated and everything, right? But the club and themselves are owning that it was an absolute correct call
Yeah,
when
yeah.
everybody in the world knows that it wasn't. So why is it so hard for Inter to say, you know, it's a hard job for the refs, and sometimes they see it 100 miles an hour. And I think that if we all want to be honest with everybody and we want integrity in the game, the ref missed the call. Yes, we got benefited for it, but that happens. This is culture. No, that's not how Inter did it, man.
Hmm.
Inter's like, no, he was contacted. It was the right call. They have not said anything other than that. So
Yeah,
what does that mean?
Marotta did.
That means that means to a lot of people that you know Marotta made all those comments. The refs are listening. The refs have, if it's anything more than who knows, but maybe it's just in their conscience that these calls are being made in favor of Inter, and it's not nothing. There's no corruption or anything like that, right? We don't
Mhm,
think. But if Inter was to say anything now about refs making an obvious mistake, then the refs are like, well, wait a minute, like, so it just it calls into question integrity of our league,
yeah,
and it's been going on for years, and now it's just a different club, and it happens to be, before it happened to be Marotta, and it's Marotta with Inter now, and I mean, I don't know, man. You can't fault anybody for thinking that there's something fishy going on. You can't do that. Um, but you can also understand how people would just say, "Hey, that's just a conspiracy theory," or that
mhm.
ain't really happening. We proved that it happened with Calciopoli before. We proved that there was corruption. Why can't corruption be a problem again? So
Yeah, I mean, I find it's funny because Marotta did speak to the media, and he touched on it, but then the whole press conference was more about, the media attention on Bastoni. Now look, I agree, like, no matter what, players should not be getting death threats, and, like, there's things that are way too far,
yeah,
obviously. But, and this was one of the things that I jested about on X where because he did this press conference in front of a TV that had a big Serie A logo on it, so I joked that, like, Marotta addressed this issue in front of his club's logo, but but it was all about, like, how the media is not being fair to Bastoni. Nobody said anything when the media was going after Vergara, who's much younger and less experienced. Nobody had any problems with the media attacking him, but God forbid we attack Bastoni for doing something like this. Um, the CEO of the club has to speak up about it. And to make matters worse, then he started citing like all these like other examples. We lost the Scudetto last season by 1 point, and the league apologized for an error they made against in our match against Roma. Or we go back to 2021. He was talking about Quadrado, who was a former player of his. And it's like it became more like what fans do, or well, yeah, well, it's okay because we got screwed in the past too, so whatever.
but
And
at any point though, he never said the
just came
words
out as
of
yeah,
the
like
ref made a mistake and we benefited. That
right,
never happened.
yeah.
So if you say that and you're like, but you know what? This is Calcio,
It's a
and
tough
we've
job,
had calls
blah,
go
blah, blah.
against us.
Yeah.
So, but dude, when you don't say that, what is that telling everybody?
Mhm.
It's telling everybody that you don't want to say that because you don't want people now to start labeling, or I'm sorry, what it's telling people is that if you're not willing to own that, then their assumption is you have something to do with that bad call, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, and if it's genuinely the case that they don't, then they would have been better off saying that, right? Like calling out that an error is made and it happens.
yeah.
Everyone's there are some positives that we can look to as we head into the home stretch of the season, despite all of the challenges we've had this season, again with the injuries and the officiating. One of the positives is that we have probably the easiest run in. This might be hard to see, but if you maximize your screen, one of the easiest run ins of the clubs that are competing for the top four. Really, the only I think difficult matches, like obviously clubs like Lazio and Bologna are they can take points from any team on any given day. Frankly, so can some of the lower table teams, especially as we get down to the wire and clubs are fighting for survival. But the only clubs, sort of direct rivals we play against are Milan and Como. That Como match could turn out to be a really crucial one, or match day 35. But when we compare that to the other clubs that we're competing with, Milan has Inter, us, Juventus, and Atalanta. Roma have Juventus, Inter, Atalanta, and I believe they're still in the Europa League, if I'm not mistaken. Juventus have Roma, Atalanta, and Milan. Atalanta probably have it the worst. They have Inter, Juve, Roma, Milan, Champions League, and Coppa Italia. So
Mm.
maybe that victory over us, yeah, it got them back in the race, but they're really gonna have to play out of their minds to finish top four. And I mean, maybe they can because they're in great form under Palladino. And then Como have Roma, Inter, and us, and they're also still alive in the Coppa Italia. So to me, then that's a positive that I think, like, even if we just win the matches we're supposed to win, which is how many are here? 12 left, I think. So say 10 out of the 12, I think we're pretty sure to get a top four spot.
That even makes me so much more frustrated seeing the difficulty of Atalanta's schedule. Like, if they lost this match, top 4 is almost done, especially if they want to keep on playing in Champions League, and they are in form right now where they could beat anybody in Champions League. Maybe not in a home away they can advance, but they are playing good enough to where they can compete with anybody right now. I believe that. And then they got the Coppa Italia. So they got all these other matches, but yet they get that victory when they shouldn't have. That is so frustrating, man, because we wouldn't have had to worry about Atalanta at all anymore. I don't think if we won that match. Not only would
Mhm.
we have gotten three, they would have lost three. You know what I mean? So that is so frustrating. But you're right. I think it's far and away we have the easiest schedule because we only got two big matches and one's at home and one's away. You know, and we seem to play some of our best football in San Siro on the road. So there's no, for me, even with the injuries, there's no reason why we shouldn't be confident to still get top four. And for me, I think the goal needs to be top three. And I say that because you don't really want to get just top four. You don't want to squeak in there. You
Mhm.
want to be in a position where you've got the right mindset going into the summer, knowing that you're good enough still, and you're not just squeaking by in the Champions League, and you feel better about yourself going into next year. So I think top three really, really needs what they need to be shooting for. And as long as they have the right approach in every match, they approach it the right way, which is to get all 3 points, especially in the ones that they're supposed to, then we should be confident. that they're going to still get in top 4. And I'm hoping for top 3, to be honest. I'm confident that we can get top 3.
Maybe,
To
who
be
knows? Maybe even top 2. I mean, Milan will have to drop some points, but if we beat Milan, they're only 1 point clear of us, and
yeah.
they have a tougher schedule too. So even top 2 would be, I think, a pretty impressive. It would. I mean, it'd be kind of like when we were finishing second during Juve's 9-year run, where it was like second, but well off of first. But
You
again,
reminded me. You reminded me of something. Not only top 3, but top 3 and Juve not in Champions League.
oh, okay.
That's the goal. That's the real goal, right? Make sure we're above Juve, and even better, they're not playing in Champions League. That would be a
Yeah,
nice way to end the season.
there's something nostalgic about that. It's like our pre-Scudetto hopes was, at the very least finish above Juventus. The other positive is that we are getting healthier. Now, I'll, knock on wood, but um, Lukaku is getting a lot closer to full fitness. Billy Gilmore's back. There's rumors that he could be starting in the Verona match. That match might be played by the time you hear this, but and Gisa's back in training, although he's, I think, not going to be in the lineup against Verona. De Bruyne's back in Napoli. Obviously, he's still a ways away from a full recovery, but we're starting to get healthier again. We're playing once a week, so that can only, in my opinion, that can only help with finishing in the top 4. But you mentioned
Man,
offline, you also have some concerns about this because,
Joe,
how do
are
we?
you are you done with the negatives, man?
Yeah, what do you have more negatives you want to talk about? I mean, I'm saving
Oh
the big
yeah. Have
one
you
for last, but
there is one more negative. Have you seen the predicted lineup for tomorrow?
uh, is Meret in goal? Is that where you're going with? No.
No. Think harder.
Oh, Politano. you know,
Here's my
something.
thing with Politano right now. My thing with Politano right now is as long as Vegata is starting, Politano, you can be on the pitch, bro. You can be on the pitch, yeah.
Mhm.
But if he's starting and Vegata's not with 1 game a week, I'm gonna fly to Napoli and find Conte to punch him in the eye. You know what I mean? That's the only thing. I don't mind Politano starting, especially if it's above Mazzocchi. But I just don't want him to start above Vergata. That's what I don't want to see.
I
I don't want to
no,
see it one
yeah.
time.
Is that where
You
are
know?
they predicting him to play as one of the 2 trequartisti? Because for me, that is not Politano's position. I feel like if he's gonna play, it's got to be as the right wing back in that.
Yeah, that's what it is actually. He's playing in the place of where Mazzocchi would play. So
Right.
yeah.
I'm totally
Yeah.
fine with that, especially because
Yeah.
they're, with no Di Lorenzo.
Yeah.
If the alternatives
I was just trying to be
Mazzocchi.
funny.
I mean, although I do kind of like Gutierrez there if Spinazzola's fit to play on the left side, but Spina's been kind of in and out of fitness. The only thing that seems a bit odd to me, and I wonder, like, I've been a Politano defender. I'm not saying he's the greatest player of all time or anything like that. I think he's been a good player for us. But to me, his strongest asset is his work rate. And I was willing to accept him in the lineup to kind of like understanding that he's not scoring the amount of goals you would expect from a winger, but I was willing to accept that given how much he tracked back and how hard he worked. But one thing I've noticed recently
Mm.
is he doesn't seem to be running the same. And I don't know if he's got some sort of injury that we don't know about. I don't know if his age just caught up to him or like all those kilometers in his legs caught up to him. But if he can't run, then he's at that point he's practically useless to us. And that sounds like a harsh statement for someone who's won a couple Scudetti with us. But I have noticed in the recent matches that he's played that he looks like he's really laboring, and in that case, then I just don't want him on the pitch. Maybe you bring him on at the end for a couple minutes, but
Do
yeah,
you
that's
think
that's
any
concerning.
do you think any of what you're saying is not a fitness thing, or I'm gonna say it's okay. So he was injured, right? So it's probably part of fitness thing. I can't really say that, but do you think that there's any part of it that has to do with his motivation, knowing
No,
that
I don't think
Vegata
so.
is doing what he's doing, knowing that 2 Scudetti? His belly's full. He's getting paid handsomely. He doesn't really have anything more, to prove. He's overachieved. You don't think that maybe a little part of that might be his motivation's not where it needs to be?
Personally, I don't think so. I suppose it's possible the way you put it, but I'm more inclined to think it's a physical thing than a mental thing. But again, I don't know. Maybe it could also be the fact that, well, no, I would say it could be also the fact that like we're clearly not going to win the Scudetto this year, but top four is still really important. So I think there's enough to be motivated there. I think with Conte as the coach, everybody's going to be motivated. With teammates like McTominay, they're going to be motivated. So I'm more inclined to think it's a fitness sort of physical thing than a motivation thing. Um, okay, I want to close the pod with another kind of big controversial story, I suppose.
Mhm.
And this I mentioned it at the top with a former Napoli player who's causing Napoli fans to become quite angry, and that is Victor Osimhen, who has been speaking to the media with his current club Galatasaray playing against Juventus in the Champions League. He's done a couple of interviews, I think, with Gazzetta dello Sport, and he's dropped a lot of hints that he would absolutely, or maybe not absolutely, but he certainly wouldn't turn down an offer from Juventus. Um, what do you make of this whole situation with Osimhen and these quotes and the potential that he can join our biggest rivals?
Well, I think it's crystal clear that that's what he wanted at the very beginning, but it never happened because of what ADL did with the contract or the
Mhm.
loan. It was a loan at the beginning, right? And then the actual sell.
Yeah.
I think that makes it obvious with all the gazing that he's doing. It's one thing to respect a big club. It's one thing to respect a former coach, but when you start doing things like the things that he was saying on the interview about, Juve is this and Juve is that, and you're pretty much, I'm not gonna cuss, man, but you know what I want to
Mhm.
say. You're pretty much, and you're doing this thing with Del Piero. Okay, Del Piero's a legend and everything, right? Okay, but God, that was a lot. That was a lot. And then, I thought a little bit more about after my first reaction about him not celebrating that goal that pretty much sent Juve home. The first reaction I had was, wow, you're advancing in the Champions League. You're one of the best strikers in the world. You've been by far the most important player for a club and a fan base that supposedly you adore, and you're not going to celebrate advancing in the Champions League on the road in that stadium? So my first reaction was, "Oh, okay, brother. All right, man. All that bullshit you said about the city and the fans and you loving us, that was bullshit." That was my first reaction, you know? But then after thinking about it for a little bit more, he wasn't happy with the way his team played. So maybe that had something to do with him not wanting to celebrate too much because he was frustrated. He was probably super tired. And then Spalletti is his former coach. So maybe some of it was that too. I don't know.
Actually, he
But it's
confirmed that.
also,
He did
yeah,
another interview afterwards where he said that it was out of respect for Spalletti, who was so important for him, and the guy that
yeah.
slept at the stadium for them, and he improved so much under him. So I agree. Like my initial reaction was like, why are you acting like you're playing you scored against your former club? Like what is that? But
Yeah.
when he explained it, I was like, all right, fine, I can live with that. But like these quotes, like I mean, clearly his issue is with De Laurentiis, right? Because he talked about how they had a gentleman's agreement and
Yep.
it wasn't fully respected, which I think translates to they agreed that Napoli would sell him, and then Napoli decided not to sell him because Juventus were the club that was interested in him. He said they tried to send him anywhere to play, and they treated him like a dog. I feel like that's a bit of an exaggeration. I mean, Of course, they're trying to sell you. Like, okay, maybe that's a reference to selling him to Saudi. I don't know. Um, could he maybe even to Turkey? But that's a no. I wouldn't make that kind of claim when you're playing for that team. Um, he said he's not a puppet. He said um, a couple of Serie A clubs were interested in him. He said Giuntoli called to take him to Juve before the negotiations with Galatasaray began, but he knew that De Laurentiis would never let it happen. Um, and but he said, and when Juventus call, regardless of everything, you sit down and listen. I think at one point he mentioned of what a legendary club it is, and he also said it would be a privilege to play for them. So you know that's a lot. Like you didn't have to like it. Really feels like he's trying hard to get their attention and regain their interest. I suppose.
And
Unfortunately
then
for
for me,
him, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
you know, the thing for me, man, about him, you know, saying or being upset about ADL not wanting to sell him to Juve. Really, bro? Juve's our rival.
Yeah, I don't know
I
why that's
mean,
such a
why
controversial
would you
thing.
be yeah, why are you like freaking out and saying you're being if part of it being treated by like a dog is not letting you get, go to Juve. Juve is a direct Scudetto rival. Nobody wants to give a world-class striker to a direct Scudetto rival.
Mhm.
So that's idiotic to me. Okay, if it was another Serie A club that we're not really worried about you making them a Scudetto challenger, that's one thing, but not somebody that you're gonna automatically make a team that's gonna fight for the Scudetto with us. Like,
Yeah, I can
and
maybe
then
see, like, the neutral being annoyed by that because you can look at these kind of what the Italian papers call anti-Italy clauses as being overall worse for the league because you're keeping out star players, I guess. But I absolutely do not like De Laurentiis proved to be a genius here because what we learned in the last couple of days is
Mhm.
that not only did he block Osimhen's transfer to Juventus, he put in a clause in the sale to Galatasaray that says that if Osimhen is sold back to a Serie A club within 12 months of the sale to Galatasaray, which happened in July. The loan happened in September of the previous year, but we looked this up before we came on. The sale was July 31st of 2025. So if Osimhen is sold to an Italian club before July 31st, 2026, then one of those clubs will have to pay Napoli 70 million euros, and if he's sold within 24 months, so before July 31st, 2027, then they have to pay Napoli 50 million euros. Plus, Napoli get, I think, 10% of any resale from that Italian club. So that we were debating offline whether a sale of Osimhen to Juventus could still happen, but that certainly makes it a lot harder when you consider that um, Galatasaray would also need to recoup some of the money that they paid for Osimhen because he's only been there for a season and a half. Um, when you consider that Juventus were knocked out of the Champions League in the playoff round, so they have less revenue to attribute towards the purchase. And when you consider Osimhen's salary, which is quite high, all of that taken together significantly reduces the likelihood that Osimhen will make a move to Juventus, but does not eliminate
yeah, I hear you. And I'm hoping all that means that he doesn't go.
it.
I think that, I think we talked offline about Valic's salary and they're trying to get rid of that. That would help them a little bit. If they get into the top four somehow, some way still, then they got that Champions League money next year. But if they don't, that's a huge hit. So yeah, maybe it's just gonna turn out to be is that, he goes there, but it's not gonna be until after that date. Would you say 31 July of next year when there's no money involved? It
No,
might just
that
have to
no,
wait
no,
until
it would
then.
be July 31st, 2027. So it'd be like a full season more without him. But they can get it down to 50 million if they did it after July 31st, 2026. I do just want to
Okay.
check how long Vlahovic's contract is, because I mean, certainly if he's still under contract, if they can sell him for like 30 million euros and get that salary off the books, then Osimhen is very much on the table. Because what we were discussing was that however the payment to Napoli is divided between these clubs, if the purchase is made on August 1st, 2026, the price tag, and let's say Galatasaray wants to get half of their transfer fee back, so 35 million, that basically puts Osimhen's price at 85 million. So if you're selling Vlahovic for 30, 55 for a world class striker is by no means uh,
Mm.
not doable. So um,
Mm.
it may come down to the sale of Vlahovic, but I want to check how long he is under contract for, because if his contract just expires naturally, they'll get that salary off the books. And actually, yeah, it's June 30th, 2026. So I think they can get the salary, but not the revenue from a sale of him, because he's
Mm.
probably going to
Okay.
go off on a free transfer unless they extend him and then sell him.
Mm. We'll have to see, man. If he goes there,
With
they
Spalletti.
they they're automatically a Scudetto challenger if he goes there,
Mhm.
man. Like immediately. Him linking up with Yildiz, Spalletti being the coach, the influx of motivation throughout the team, because that's part of their problem too, is they're not able to like be motivated for all 90 minutes of every match. We've seen that, right? They've had their moments, like them trying to get to the next round in Champions League the way they did against Gala at home. Like that was pretty impressive, man.
Mm.
I can't lie. So
Yeah.
glad it didn't happen, but um
But I
there
do
is
think
some heart.
they need more work than just a striker. Like that's the other thing. Like they
Oh
can't
yeah,
spend
for
all their
sure.
money on a striker. They need at
Yeah.
least one, if not two center backs. They probably need a midfielder too. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I agree. Like that is a game changer with Spalletti staying, which I think is quite likely at this point as well.
Yeah, especially with I'll be honest, like I was on the fence what they were going to do with Spalletti until Chiellini came out and said, "Shut up, he's staying." Like when he came out and said, I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
because I mean, even if they find another capable striker, they're not going to be somebody to whimper at. They've sucked for quite a long time, and it feels so good to say that. But Spalletti has shown that he can make a difference, and if they get the signings they need, whether it's somebody else and not Osimhen, man, they're going to be a problem next year if they get the signings. They got to execute and they got to get those signings, but um, I felt that way as soon as I knew Spalletti was going.
Mhm.
I felt they were absolutely going to be back in the mix next year, and I thought that they would be a problem for us in the table this year, and I don't think that's going to be the case anymore after you showing me that schedule for sure. So I'm not too worried about them leapfrogging us, which is it's absolutely a yearly goal. No matter whether we're 10th place with Garcia or not, if we can finish above, Juve, that is one of the goals officially for the Partenope. So
And again, that could
it'll
be
always be that way, man.
the other deal breaker could be whether if they don't finish in top four, that'll really hamper their ability to invest in the club. So
And I mean, if you're Osimhen too, and you know that you're not going to be playing in Champions League, that has to have some type of bearing on your decision of where you're going to. I mean, I would imagine he wants to play in the Champions League each and every year. So
yeah, although I think his first season with us, we weren't in the Champions League, if I'm not
no,
mistaken.
no, but he's in the middle of his prime
Prime now,
now.
yeah.
Like him not playing in Champions League, even if it's just 1 year, I'm sure that he's not it's not something that he wants to do. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And even if you're not playing in 1 year, do you know for sure that you're not gonna that tragedy is not going to happen with injuries and you're not going to have a struggle getting into Champions League the following. It's never a guarantee,
Mhm.
So to be automatically in the Champions League, I think that would be important for him too. But I don't think they're going to get there. I don't think they're going to make top four, man.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Well, hopefully a Premier League club finally steps up and throws a big price at the player to Galatasaray as well as a salary to convince Osimhen to go there instead of to Juve.
Man, I think that time's passed, bro.
You think so already? I think he could
Yeah.
absolutely still. It,
I
but
think
I
he's
think,
good enough.
yeah,
I
I
think
think
he's good
it's
enough.
the attitude that's blocking him from going. Like I saw
And
the
his
highlights of.
salary.
Yeah, but they can afford it. I don't know. I
No,
know
I mean
I know there's
it's
financial fair play and stuff or whatever they call it in the Premier League.
but it's the attitude with the salary.
Yeah,
Like if
yeah.
it was just the salary and he didn't have this immaturity problem,
Mhm,
okay, cool. But it's both put together because his salary is a Premier League type salary, and you don't want a dude that's got a problem with his
mhm,
attitude. You know what I mean?
mhm.
And he's definitely got that reputation. I mean, that reputation is ingrained in him. It's not like he's going to convince somebody, "I'll be a good boy,"
Well, and it
That's
doesn't seem to be going away, right? Like we saw the dispute with Lookman during the AFCON and like to
yeah,
the point where he almost left AFCON. And then I can't remember which match it was. It might have been the first leg against Juventus where he was like freaking out on a teammate after they had just beat
yep,
Juve
yep,
5-2.
yep.
And so like that's still very much a thing with him. And I suppose like you take the good with the bad and you just hope one outweighs the other. But yeah, that could
And
really
then
be what prevents him
yeah,
from playing there.
and then when he was talking with CBS, the way that he said that, you know, his team did not perform well today, it would have been better for him to word it like in a way, well, we really, really did well at home, and we knew it was going to be really hard to play against Juve
Mhm,
here. And I think we came into the match maybe a little bit overconfident or whatever. No, man, he just came out and said, for lack of better terms, we suck today.
mhm, mhm.
Dude, you're going to the next round of the Champions League.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
I know what
that's
you
the way he said it's the wrong way. So
All right. Well, let's hope. We got our own problems to worry about, I think. It'll be an interesting summer for Napoli as well. We'll see. I've already started to see some rumors about maybe Lukaku going on in, you know, Saudi or back to Belgium or whatever. We seem to be making a concerted effort to lower the age of the squad. Now, I don't know if that is more ADL and Manna taking that initiative. There were some reports I think I saw that um, I don't know if it was Allison or uh, Giovanni that those were more Manna signings than Conte signings. I'm not sure, but I
did
think
you
it could
see
also.
the did you see do you believe anything about those rumors that ADL might be thinking about a different sporting director?
I don't buy that.
Me neither.
I think
I
I
mean,
think they're
there's a
putting their
reason. I think there's a reason that they're comfortable in saying those false things because of Lang and Luca. I think if it
sure.
wasn't for Lang and Luca, like if we didn't completely gaff those two signings, then I don't think that rumor would even be happening. But they feel comfortable in saying that bullshit because of that.
I mean, you can look at some other ones as well, like Bokuma maybe not not as good as we hoped, but like to me,
I think that's Conte
especially
though with Bokuma not getting him in a routine,
yeah,
man.
but that's what I was gonna say. Like, I don't even think you can judge Napoli players in just one season with Conte. Okay, fine. Like Lang, I think had more to do with they just didn't see eye to eye, and like Lang gave that interview and whatever. I think Luca clearly didn't work out. Unfortunately, Nottingham fans have quickly realized he's not that good, and so they're all like, "Send this guy back ASAP."
God, he looks so dumb with that first post on Instagram too, where he's like, "Oh, I'm showing y'all."
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because he scored right away, and then what
Forgive
has he
them,
done
they
since?
for not knowing or whatever, and now he's just getting absolutely killed by Nottingham fans. So unfortunately, he's coming
Yeah,
back. Um, but I
yeah.
feel like, especially the younger players, I don't think you could judge them for 1 season under Conte or half a season. Like, I think it does take time to, especially if you did not have a summer retiro with Conte, it's just going to take time to earn his trust. So I think there's a few different things going on. I think also that they're lowering the age of the squad because that probably, like, you look at the injuries we've had, it's been a lot of muscular injuries, and it's tended to happen more with the players that are a bit older. So, maybe that's a bit of an insurance policy that if I think Conte will still rely on his trusted players regardless of their age, but at least you have some players that are ready to go if Spinazzola gets hurt or Politano gets hurt or whatever. And then I
Do you
think
think
it's
our
also some planning for beyond Conte, right? Like, and I think it's
yeah.
the club has a responsibility to do that.
Do you think our front attack is has the potential to be Hojlund, Vergara, and Santos? Do you think that would be enough for like the starting front attack for Conte, or do you just from what we've seen from Santos? I think it's obvious with Vergara, in my opinion. I think Conte really needs to give him that full opportunity to be that guy. And then Santos has shown flashes. If Santos continues to play this way for the rest of the season, do you think Conte is going to be satisfied and he's not going to bring up the Cavada debacle again?
Um, I It's hard to say because I'm not even sure that that's going to be the formation when everybody's healthy, right? Like, this is something we were talking about as well. Like, how do you? The challenge at the start of the season was how do you fit all these pieces together? I almost would even put De Bruyne aside because who knows how long he's going to stay if he gets another injury or whatever. But even just thinking like McTominay and Gisa, Lobotka, you know, that the it'll be challenging because they work best in a 4-3-3, but then Vergara is not really a winger. He seems to need to play behind the striker. So
Like a number 10? Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know. Maybe Conte comes up, but maybe you play the 4-3-2-1, the Christmas tree formation.
But
Maybe,
do you think Vergara and Santos, I mean, obviously Hoyland needs to be our starting striker, but do you think Vergara and Santos need to be in that starting 11 from what you've seen so far? Do you think they're good enough and we're not going to get the best out of them if they're coming off the bench? What do you think?
I personally would rather one of them start on the bench. Like, I don't want them both on the field together. I feel like they're both. I know Vergara roams a lot, but and can play on either. They're central, but I feel like they're both kind of left-sided players. So I would even want to see like maybe Vergara, McTominay there, right? To play
Mm,
McTominay a bit higher up, he can link up more with Hojlund. He's more attack
mm,
minded, score goals versus playing
mm,
Hojlund and McTominay. I think again this season we dropped McTominay more out of necessity, and he's such a good
mm.
player that he can play that role and he'll never question the coach's decision. But maybe you have uh Zambo and Lobotka as those two central midfielders, and McTominay is playing in a more attacking role, or Lobotka and Gilmore, which is something we might see against Verona. So
So
I would
you see Santos as a sub,
for
as
now,
a bench player more than a starter? Okay.
yeah, like our sample size is so small, it's hard to say. But from what we've
Yeah.
seen, he came off the bench and he killed it, and then when he started, he was okay, and he had
Yeah.
moments. But so based
Mhm.
on that very very limited sample size, I would keep him on the bench and bring him off. Kind of like Neres, and then we still have Neres too when he comes back. There's another player, so
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I think this is a good problem to have. I think we're well stocked. I think there will still be some moves in the summer, nowhere near as many as we saw last summer. And then I trust Conte to figure out the best way to put the parts together to optimize our results.
And you have to imagine that one of the other things that they really need to analyze and figure out what's going on is the injuries in general, especially like the recovery of those injuries, and if that medical staff has anything to do with that, you know?
Yeah, that's a tough one. But, De Laurentiis is finally gonna build a training center, no?
Yeah, the last thing I saw was it's Putswooly now. I thought he already picked up the rock and set it down in Suchivo, and now all of a sudden it's gonna be on the waterfront.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
wouldn't hold my breath on any
yeah.
either training facility or stadium. But you're right, like, someone will have to get to the bottom of this injury situation because we can't afford another season where we're half our team is
Mm-mm.
injured again. So
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
then we are a bit over time, so let's wrap it up there. But I'm happy to go over because it's been so long since we've chatted, and it's always a pleasure to have you on. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's an honor being on your show as always, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. So if you want to find Dan and his son Mario, probably the best place right now is on YouTube at Napoli. Just search Napoli Nation TV. Fantastic show. I love the father son dynamic. This is something you've been working on for quite some time. So I love to see that you guys have been doing it. You can also find you on X at Napla DBO. And I imagine the show is on pretty much all the social media channels. But certainly,
I actually had a problem with the Instagram. We didn't do a whole lot on Instagram, to be honest, but literally like 2 hours ago, I finally figured out a way for that stupid facial recognition to recognize me and get me logged back in. So
you're
uh,
really making yourself sound old here on the
you know how
Instagram.
many times this thing where I don't know if you've ever had to try to get back into account where you're having a problem with your. So the problem was is my Italian cell phone. They kept on sending a code to that. I don't have that
Uh,
number anymore. Dumbass me didn't update it as soon as I got to the States. So eventually that bit me in the butt. And
mm,
it was doing this other thing where I was going to recover my password for months now, where I had to do this facial recognition where I had to look and then go like this and then go like
mm.
all this kind of stuff, right? And it was never taken. And then 2 hours ago or so, it took. I'm like,
Oh,
what?
there you go. You're back
So
in.
we finally got logged
All
back
right,
in.
so
Yeah.
so check out Napoli Nation TV on Instagram as well. If you want to get a hold of me, you can find me mostly on X at Joe_Fischetti5, or you can find the podcast on all the usual social media channels and on YouTube as well. If you're not already, please subscribe, like, do all that stuff. It just helps to spread the word. Hopefully we'll be back soon. Hopefully we'll be talking about some victories after a bit of a rocky stretch there. But until next time, I'm Joe Fischetti. Forza Napoli sempre.